welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. Houston City Planning Department Infrastructure Coordination Division. Log entry #4471A. Date: March 15, 2025. Coordinator: Carries Vex. Time: 8:47 Central Standard Time. Another Monday morning in downtown Houston, and the coffee tastes like burnt disappointment. The building's HVAC system has been making that grinding noise for 3 weeks now, but facilities keep saying it's within acceptable parameters. I swear the temperature in my office drops 5 degrees every time that thing cycles on. Started the day reviewing weekend permit applications. Standard stuff mostly: residential additions in the Heights, a strip mall renovation in Katy, the usual parade of pool installations that make me question humanity's priorities. Then I hit application #TX, HAR 2025-0847, and my coffee went cold in my hand. Permit request. Applicant: JP Morgan Chase Tower Management. Request type: commercial relocation. Details: request permission to relocate structure from 600 Travis Street to intersection of Fannin and Webster Streets, approximately 0.3 miles northwest. Timeline: immediate. Reason: improved positioning for optimal operational efficiency. I read it 3 times before the absurdity fully registered. Someone wanted to move a 75-story skyscraper like it was a food truck. The system had already auto-assigned a case number and sent confirmation emails to 7 different departments. I could picture Melira Grovedown in historical preservation having a field day with this one. She loves when the bureaucracy produces what she calls administrative surrealism, called Ronan Hale in structural engineering. He picked up on the first ring, which meant he was either desperate for distraction or buried in calculations again. "Please tell me you're calling about something that makes sense," he said without preamble. "I've been staring at stress load reports from the medical center that look like someone fed them through a paper shredder. Define makes sense. How do you feel about moving the Chase Tower a few blocks over?" The silence stretched long enough that I checked if the call had dropped. Finally: "Are we talking about demolition and reconstruction? Because the permits for that would be no demo, just relocation. Like the whole building decided to take a stroll." Ronan's laugh had an edge to it. "Christ, Carries, what kind of day are you having? Dancing skyscrapers? What's next? The Astrodome doing pirouettes?" I forwarded him the permit application and listened to his keyboard clicking as he pulled it up. The clicking stopped. "This is obviously a system glitch," he said, but his voice had lost its humor. "Some intern probably fat-fingered a data entry. Buildings don't just relocate. Not unless you're talking about geological events, and Houston's sitting on clay, not tectonic fault lines, right? Obviously." But something cold had settled in my stomach. "Can you run me a quick structural analysis on that address change? Just to close the loop properly." "Sure. Give me 20 minutes. I spent those 20 minutes trying to focus on normal permits, but my eyes kept drifting to the window. The downtown skyline looked exactly like it always did. A jagged line of glass and steel reaching toward the perpetually hazy Texas sky. The Chase Tower stood exactly where it had for decades, reflecting morning sunlight off its western face like a geometric mirror. My phone rang at 9:31. "Carries?" Ronan's voice was tight. "You need to see this. I ran the structural analysis like you asked, and the numbers are wrong. According to the stress calculations, if the Chase Tower were at the Fannin-Webster intersection, the load distribution would actually be more stable. Better soil compression, improved wind resistance profiles. It's like someone ran optimization algorithms and found the perfect spot. That's good." "No, it's impossible. The building was positioned based on the best engineering data available in 1982. Modern computational analysis might find marginal improvements, but not significant ones. Not enough to justify a move that would cost billions and require complete infrastructure rerouting. I stared out my window again. The building was still there, exactly where it belonged. But something about its silhouette seemed different, more angular somehow, as if I was seeing it from a slightly altered perspective. Ronan, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Does the Chase Tower look like it's in the right place to you? Another long pause. Define right place. I mean, does it look like it's where it was yesterday? Carries, that's not. Buildings don't move. They can't move. The foundation alone weighs. Just look out your window and tell me what you see. I heard his chair squeak as he turned. The silence stretched until I wondered if he'd hung up. It looks normal, he said finally. But there's construction equipment around the base that I don't remember seeing before. Orange barriers, some kind of excavation work. Could be utility maintenance. I squinted at my view. There was construction equipment. Bright orange barriers forming a perimeter around the building's base. Heavy machinery that hadn't been there Friday afternoon. When had that shown up? My computer chimed with an incoming email. The sender was listed as Houston Emergency Alert System, Automated Distribution. Emergency Alert, Houston Metropolitan Area. Issued 9:34 Central Standard Time. Alert level, informational. Subject, infrastructure relocation protocols. Citizens are advised that routine infrastructure relocation procedures are now in effect for downtown Houston. Please consult the attached building position reference guide for current locations of municipal and commercial structures. GPS systems will automatically update to reflect new positions. Normal business operations will continue during relocation periods. This is an automated message. Do not reply. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. The attachment was a PDF titled Houston_building_positions_current.pdf with a timestamp from 15 minutes in the future. My hands were shaking slightly as I called Ronan back. Did you get an emergency alert just now? Yeah, about infrastructure relocation. What the hell does that even mean? Infrastructure doesn't relocate. It gets built, maintained, and eventually demolished. Those are the only options. Open the attachment. I heard him clicking, then a sharp intake of breath. This is a map of downtown Houston, he said slowly. But the buildings they're not where they should be. The Chase Tower is marked at Fannin and Webster, just like that permit requested. The Wells Fargo Plaza is 3 blocks south of where it actually is. The Heritage Plaza looks like someone moved it to where the Hyatt Regency should be. I opened the PDF on my screen. It was exactly as Ronan described, a detailed municipal map showing every major downtown building in locations that were completely wrong. But the precision was incredible. Street numbers, utility connections, even parking structure access points were all meticulously documented for the new positions. This has to be some kind of elaborate hoax, I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. System infiltration, maybe. Someone hacking the emergency alert network as a prank. Yeah, Ronan agreed. Has to be. Buildings don't move. It's physically impossible. But as I looked out my window again, the Chase Tower seemed to shimmer slightly in the morning heat haze, its edges not quite as crisp as they should be. And somewhere deep in the building beneath me, that HVAC system gave another grinding mechanical shudder that seemed to echo up through the foundation itself. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check the traffic cameras. I pulled up the city's traffic monitoring system and selected the camera at Travis and Capitol, which should have shown the Chase Tower prominently in frame. The image loaded slowly, pixels resolving into a clear view of downtown Houston. The Chase Tower wasn't there. End of log entry #4471A. Filed under anomalous incidents. Pending investigation. Next action. Coordinate with Emergency Management Division. Notes. Recommend immediate downtown aerial survey. Houston City Planning Department Infrastructure Coordination Division. Log entry #4471B. Date March 16, 2025. Coordinator Carries Vex. Time 7:15 Central Standard Time. Status Day 2 multiple infrastructure anomaly reports. Didn't sleep last night. Kept checking the traffic cameras every 20 minutes. Watching buildings flicker between positions like some kind of architectural shell game. By 3 a.m., I documented 17 major structures showing positional inconsistencies across downtown Houston. The Chase Tower appeared in 4 different locations within a 6-hour period. Coffee tastes worse today. Everything tastes worse. Started fielding calls at 6:30 a.m. First was Mrs. Chun from the Historic District Preservation Society, voice shaking as she described how the Julia Eidson building had walked itself 2 blocks east overnight. Then Carlos Mendoza from Public Works, reporting that 3 separate GPS units were directing his crew to different locations for the same water main repair. It's like the city is playing games with us, Carlos said. My guys are getting dizzy trying to follow directions that keep changing every 5 minutes. By 7 a.m., the complaint hotline had logged 43 calls about building displacement irregularities. Ivara Loon from Emergency Management called an emergency coordination meeting for 8:30. Her assistant sounded panicked when she scheduled it. Director Loon wants all department heads present, she said. Something about unprecedented infrastructure anomalies requiring immediate interagency response protocols. Translation: nobody knows what the hell is happening. Time 8:30 Central Standard Time. Emergency coordination meeting. Ivara's conference room felt smaller than usual, packed with department heads who all wore variations of the same confused expression. She'd pulled up a massive display showing downtown Houston from 3 different satellite imaging systems, each showing completely different building arrangements. Let me be clear about our situation, Ivara began, her usually crisp delivery showing stress fractures. In the past 18 hours, we've received over 200 reports of major commercial and municipal buildings appearing in incorrect locations. Our GPS infrastructure is recalibrating continuously. Emergency response teams are getting lost trying to reach addresses that no longer correspond to physical locations. Ronan raised his hand. Director Loon, I've run structural analyses on 15 of the reported position changes. From an engineering perspective, every new location shows improved stability profiles. It's as if someone ran comprehensive urban optimization algorithms and physically implemented the results. Buildings don't optimize themselves, Mr. Hale, Ivara snapped. What I need are explanations that make sense within the realm of physical possibility. I pulled up the social media monitoring dashboard on my tablet. We have another problem. Citizens are posting videos of the building movements. #HoustonShift is trending with over 10,000 posts in the last hour. The room went quiet as I played a compilation video someone had posted. Shaky phone footage showed the Heritage Plaza seemingly sliding along the street like it was on invisible rails, accompanied by a low rumbling sound that made the recording quality deteriorate. Comments ranged from obvious CGI to biblical end times to detailed conspiracy theories about government weather manipulation. How do we contain this? Asked Martinez from Public Information. We don't, I said. The footage is too consistent across multiple sources. Either we're dealing with the most sophisticated hoax in history, or buildings in Houston are actually moving. Severick Cross from the Geological Survey spoke up from the back of the room. I've been monitoring seismic activity since yesterday morning. We're registering constant low-level vibrations throughout the downtown area, but the patterns are unlike anything in our databases. They're not random like construction noise or natural settling. There's a geometric precision to the frequency patterns. He pulled up a waveform analysis on his laptop. Look at this. The vibrations follow mathematical sequences. If I didn't know better, I'd say the underground infrastructure is resonating according to some kind of architectural music. Architectural music? Avara's voice had gone flat with disbelief. Harmonic frequencies that correspond to optimal building placement patterns. Like the city itself is humming the tune of perfect urban design. I felt something cold crawl up my spine. Severick, can you cross-reference those harmonic patterns with the new building positions from yesterday's alert system malfunction? His fingers flew across the keyboard. After a moment, his face went pale. They match. The seismic harmonics predict exactly where the buildings have been showing up. The room erupted in competing theories: underground construction, corporate conspiracy, elaborate publicity stunt. But I was watching the live traffic feed on the main screen, and something was happening to the Wells Fargo Plaza. The building seemed to be breathing. Its outline pulsed slightly, becoming less distinct at the edges before snapping back into sharp focus. Everyone needs to see this, I said, cutting through the arguments. The room fell silent as we watched the Wells Fargo Plaza perform an impossible architectural dance. The building became translucent for perhaps 30 seconds, revealing the street behind it, before solidifying in a position 3 blocks south of where it had been moments before. The traffic camera auto-adjusted its angle to track the movement. "That's not possible," whispered someone from engineering. "And yet we're watching it happen," Ivara said grimly. She turned to address the room. "I'm declaring a citywide infrastructure emergency. All non-essential personnel are to evacuate the downtown core immediately. Emergency services are switching to manual navigation protocols until GPS systems stabilize." Martinez from Public Information raised his hand. "What do we tell the media?" "The truth," Ivara said. "That we're experiencing unprecedented infrastructure anomalies and are working to ensure public safety. Do not speculate about causes. Do not confirm or deny the video footage. Just focus on evacuation procedures and emergency protocols." As the meeting broke up, Ronan caught my arm. "Carries, I've been thinking about those permit applications you showed me yesterday. What if they weren't system glitches? What if something is actually processing requests for building relocations? Something like what? I don't know. But whoever or whatever is doing this has access to our city planning databases, our structural engineering specifications, and apparently the ability to manipulate physical reality on an architectural scale." I looked out the conference room window at the downtown skyline. It looked normal from this distance, but I knew that was an illusion. Somewhere out there, buildings were sliding through space like pieces on a cosmic game board, following rules that made perfect engineering sense but violated every law of physics I understood. My phone buzzed. Another emergency alert. Emergency alert. Houston Metropolitan Area. Issued 9:47 Central Standard Time. Alert level advisory. Subject: building position updates. Please note that ongoing infrastructure optimization procedures may result in temporary displacement of commercial and residential structures. Citizens are advised to verify building locations using the Houston mobile navigation app before traveling to specific addresses. Updated position maps are available at houston.gov/current-locations. Estimated completion time: 72 hours. This is an automated message. Do not reply. I showed the alert to Ronan. His face had gone gray. "Carries, that app didn't exist yesterday. I checked the city's mobile platform registry this morning. Someone created a fully functional navigation application overnight and integrated it with our emergency alert system. Who has that kind of access? Nobody. Not even our IT department could deploy something that sophisticated without weeks of testing and approval processes." I opened the Houston mobile navigation app on my phone. It loaded instantly, displaying a real-time map of downtown Houston with buildings marked in their current positions. As I watched, the Pennzoil Place icon shifted 2 blocks east, and the map smoothly updated to reflect the new location. At the bottom of the screen, a progress bar showed urban optimization, 23% complete. End of log entry #4471B. Filed under critical infrastructure emergency. Next action: field investigation team deployment. Notes: request immediate consultation with architectural historians. Personal note: Called mom to tell her to avoid downtown. She asked if this was a terrorist attack. I said I didn't know, which is the most terrifying thing I've ever told her. Houston Emergency Management Division Field Investigation Report. Date: March 17, 2025. Time: 14:22 Central Standard Time. Lead Coordinator: Carries Vex. Emergency Protocol Status: Active Day 1. The city feels wrong under my feet. That's not a technical assessment. It's pure animal instinct screaming that something fundamental has shifted beneath Houston's surface. We've been walking downtown for 3 hours now, and my inner compass keeps insisting we're going the wrong direction even when GPS confirms our route. Ivara Loon assembled our field team at 0800 this morning. Besides myself and Ronan, she brought in Severick Cross from the Geological Survey Office and, surprisingly, Melira Grove from Historical Preservation. When I asked why we needed a historian for what appeared to be a massive infrastructure crisis, Ivara's response was cryptic. Ms. Grove requested assignment, said she might have relevant expertise. Melira has been unusually quiet since we started walking. She carries a leather satchel that looks older than she is, and I've caught her checking a hand-drawn map that definitely isn't from our department. Every few blocks, she stops and traces symbols on building facades with her finger. Symbols I can't quite see until she points them out. There, she said 20 minutes ago, outside what used to be the Wells Fargo Plaza. The building loomed exactly where our updated map said it would be, but my brain kept insisting it belonged 4 blocks north. Do you see the markings? I followed her pointing finger to the building's base, where the granite met the sidewalk. At first, I saw nothing but the usual urban accumulation of grime and wear. Then my eyes adjusted, and the symbols emerged like optical illusions resolving into clarity. Carved directly into the foundation stone were intricate geometric patterns. Spirals within triangles, interconnected circles, lines that seemed to follow mathematical principles I couldn't identify. Those weren't there before, Ronan said flatly. I've walked past this building 1,000 times. I would have noticed. Would you? Melira asked. Or would you have seen what you expected to see? Severick knelt beside the symbols with his portable seismic scanner. These carvings are old, he said after a moment. The weathering patterns suggest decades of exposure, maybe longer. But that's impossible. This foundation was poured in 1983. I have the geological surveys from the original construction. Check your surveys again, Melira said quietly. I think you'll find they show something different now. The cold certainty in her voice made my stomach clench. Severick pulled out his tablet and navigated to the archived geological reports. His face went pale. The original foundation survey shows these symbols, he said slowly, documented and photographed in 1982. But I absolutely know, that these markings weren't in the files yesterday. I've been keeping detailed photographic records as we move through downtown. The pattern is consistent. Every building that has relocated, according to our updated maps, shows these same foundation symbols. More disturbing, when I compare my photos to archival images from the city database, the symbols appear in historical documentation that I swear was cleaned just days ago. Either someone has orchestrated the most elaborate hoax in municipal history, or reality itself is being rewritten around us. There's something you need to understand, Melira said as we stood in the shadow of the JP Morgan Chase Tower. The building rose above us exactly where the impossible permit had requested it be moved. Fannin and Webster, 3 blocks from its original location. Houston wasn't built randomly. The city's founders had access to very specific information about optimal positioning. What kind of information? I asked. Instead of answering directly, she opened her leather satchel and withdrew a rolled document that looked like parchment but felt strangely warm to the touch. As she unrolled it, I saw a detailed map of downtown Houston, but not the Houston I knew. This map showed the city as a vast geometric design, with buildings positioned at precise intervals according to some underlying pattern. Lines connected the structures in a complex web that resembled circuit diagrams more than urban planning. This is a copy of the original city design, Melira said. The real design, not the one they teach in urban planning courses. Ronan examined the map over my shoulder. This is impossible. The mathematics alone, you'd need computational power that didn't exist in the 1800s to calculate these positions. Who said the calculations were done in the 1800s? Melira asked. Before I could process that statement fully, Severic's seismic equipment started beeping frantically. He stared at the readout with an expression of pure confusion. I'm getting massive underground activity, he said, but not tectonic. These readings suggest movement. Large-scale structural movement in the subsurface layers. What kind of movement? I asked, like something enormous is shifting position beneath the entire downtown area. The resonance patterns are consistent with architecture moving through soil. But that's impossible. Stop saying that, Melira said sharply. Stop saying things are impossible when you're seeing them happen. I pulled up the current GPS map on my tablet and compared it to Melira's parchment. The correlation was undeniable. Every building that had relocated was moving toward a position marked on her historical map. The J.P. Morgan Chase Tower, the Wells Fargo Plaza, the Heritage Plaza, all sliding across Houston's grid like pieces on a board game, each finding its designated spot in some ancient pattern. How long have you known about this? I asked Melira. My family has been watching Houston for 4 generations, she said, waiting for the signs, the symbols appearing on foundations, the documentation changing, the buildings beginning to remember their true positions. Remember, architecture has memory, carries. Stone remembers its intended shape. Steel remembers its designed purpose. Houston's buildings are simply returning to where they were always meant to be. Ronan was shaking his head. You're talking about buildings like they're alive, aren't they? Melira asked. They house thousands of people, circulate air and water and electricity through their veins, grow and change and adapt to their environment. What's the difference between a building and a body? I wanted to argue, but something about the way she phrased it resonated. Houston has always felt alive to me. The rhythm of traffic like a heartbeat, the flow of people like blood through arteries, the buildings reaching toward the sky like a vast organism growing toward light. There's more, Severick said, studying his seismic readings. The underground movement isn't random. It's following the same geometric pattern as the surface relocations. Whatever's happening, it extends deep into the earth. I thought about Houston's unique geography, the city built on clay soil that shifts and settles, the network of underground tunnels connecting downtown buildings, the vast infrastructure of pipes and cables and foundations buried beneath our feet. If buildings could somehow move through that subsurface matrix, we need to get underground, I said. The tunnel system. If buildings are moving, there has to be evidence in the tunnels. Melira nodded approvingly. The tunnels will show us the truth. But be prepared. What we find down there might change everything you believe about this city. As we walked toward the nearest tunnel entrance, I caught a glimpse of movement in my peripheral vision. The Heritage Plaza seemed to shimmer, its edges blurring like heat distortion. For just a moment, I could swear I saw the building in 2 positions simultaneously, where it stood now and where it had been 3 days ago, like a double-exposure photograph of impossible architecture. Did you see that? I asked Ronan. See what? But when I looked back, the building was solid and singular, exactly where our updated maps said it belonged. Only the lingering sense of wrongness remained, and the geometric symbols carved into foundations that definitely, absolutely, had not been there before. Underground tunnel access point, McKinney Street. Time, 1547 Central Standard Time. The Houston tunnel system stretches for miles beneath downtown, connecting major buildings in a climate-controlled network that allows pedestrians to avoid the brutal summer heat. I've walked these tunnels hundreds of times, but today they feel different. The familiar landmarks are shifted, not dramatically, but enough to make navigation feel uncertain. We're following Melira's map, and she's leading us toward what she calls the convergence point. a section of tunnels that doesn't appear on any official city diagram. Severic's equipment shows increasing seismic activity as we move deeper, and the geometric symbols we found on building foundations are appearing here too, carved into tunnel walls and support pillars. The symbols are getting more complex, Melira observed, tracing a particularly intricate pattern with her finger. And more recent, Severick added, running his scanner over the markings. These were carved within the last 48 hours. By who? Ronan asked. Not who, Melira said quietly. What? Ahead of us, the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that absolutely should not exist. The space was circular, maybe 50 feet in diameter, with a domed ceiling covered in the same geometric symbols we'd been seeing. But these symbols were moving, literally shifting and rearranging as we watched, forming new patterns that hurt to look at directly. At the center of the chamber stood a pillar of what looked like crystallized light, pulsing with the same rhythm as the seismic readings on Severick's equipment. The pillar extended upward through the ceiling and downward through the floor, as if it were a massive axis around which the entire city rotated. Welcome to Houston's true foundation, Melira said, the anchor point around which everything else positions itself. As I stared at the impossible pillar, I realized I could feel it in my bones, a deep thrumming that synchronized with my heartbeat, as if the city itself had a pulse and we were standing at its heart. The buildings weren't just moving randomly. They were being drawn into formation around the central point, like iron filings aligning with a magnet. Houston was transforming itself into something that had been planned long before any of us were born, and we were running out of time to understand why. End of investigation report. Status: critical. Anomalous phenomena confirmed. Next action: deep geological survey of convergence point. Notes: request immediate consultation with historical archives and geological survey specialists. Houston Emergency Operations Center Crisis Log. Entry hashtag EOC 2025-0318-1147. Coordinator K. Vex. Acting Authority Director Loon incapacitated. Hour 18 citywide emergency status. Critical. Time: 11:47 Central Standard Time. The screaming started at dawn. Not human screaming, though there's been plenty of that. This is the sound of a city tearing itself apart. 30-story buildings grinding against their foundations, steel and concrete shrieking as structures slide through space like pieces on some cosmic chessboard. The audio from street-level monitoring posts is barely human tolerable. We've had 3 technicians request reassignment after listening to the downtown feeds. Ivara Loon collapsed 20 minutes ago. Complete nervous breakdown. She kept staring at the emergency protocol manual, flipping through pages, muttering about evacuation procedures that don't account for buildings that relocate mid-rescue. Paramedics sedated her. I'm running point now, and I have no idea what I'm doing. The situation has accelerated beyond any disaster scenario we've trained for. Current status summary: 47 confirmed building relocations in downtown core. 12 additional structures in residential areas showing movement signatures. Emergency services response time degraded by 340% due to navigation failures. Estimated civilian evacuation completion: 23%. Communication infrastructure failing rapidly. The evacuation is a nightmare. Try coordinating mass transit when bus routes change every 30 minutes because the buildings they serve decide to take a stroll. The metro rail system shut down after Union Station relocated 4 blocks east. The tracks just followed it, bent like putty, maintaining perfect alignment as if physics was taking suggestions rather than giving orders. Fire Station 8 responded to a structural collapse call on Lamar Street. When they arrived, the building they were supposed to rescue was gone. Not collapsed, gone. Empty lot like it had never existed. The 911 caller was still on the line, trapped on the 7th floor of a building that was no longer there. We found the building 20 minutes later. It had settled into Hermann Park, somehow without disturbing a single tree. All occupants rescued successfully. The building's electrical and plumbing systems were functioning normally. despite being completely disconnected from city infrastructure. Ronan's been running continuous structural analysis from the mobile command unit. His latest report makes my teeth ache. The mathematics don't work, carries. These buildings are maintaining structural integrity while violating every principle of load distribution and foundation engineering. The Wells Fargo Plaza is currently sitting on what used to be a parking lot, soft earth, no deep foundation, no utility connections. It should have collapsed or at least shown significant settling. Instead, it's more stable than when it was properly anchored. Melira disappeared 3 hours ago, left her post in the historical research station with a note. Gone to check the old records. If the pattern holds, we have until sunset. Security footage shows her entering the Julia Eidson building just before it began its own relocation sequence. She's somewhere in a moving library, presumably still researching while the building slides through downtown like a 75-foot-tall reading room on wheels. The panic is spreading faster than we can contain it. Social media feeds are flooded with videos of impossible architecture, buildings phasing through each other, structures appearing to exist in 2 locations simultaneously, gravity working at angles that make your brain hurt to process. The hashtag Houston Shift has 2.3 million posts and climbing. Radio transcript, emergency channel 7 to 11:23 Central Standard Time. Command, this is Unit 47. We've got a problem at Methodist Hospital. Go ahead. 47. The building. Command, the hospital is rotating. Like spinning in place. Slowly, but it's definitely rotating. The parking garage is moving with it, but the ambulance bay is... Christ, I don't know how to describe this. The ambulance bay is staying stationary while the rest of the building turns around it. Unit 47, repeat your last. Did you say the building is rotating? Affirmative. Full 360-degree rotation. Approximately 1 revolution every 12 minutes. Patients are being evacuated through windows on the south side because the doors keep moving away from the parking structure. Stand by 47. We can't stand by. We can't evacuate fast enough. We can't communicate with the outside world because our transmission towers keep relocating, and apparently radio waves don't automatically reroute when the broadcasting antenna decides to take a scenic tour of the suburbs. The National Weather Service issued a tornado watch for Harris County 20 minutes ago. Not because of weather, because their Doppler radar is showing massive circular motion signatures centered on downtown Houston. Turns out rotating buildings create atmospheric disturbances that look exactly like supercell formations on meteorological instruments. Severick's seismic data from this morning showed something that made him go very quiet. The underground movement patterns aren't random. They're following geometric principles, mathematical progressions that he says are consistent with ancient architectural planning methodologies. When I pressed him for details, he showed me a printout that looked like a mandala made of earthquake readouts. It's a ritual circle, he said, a massive one with downtown Houston as the center point. Each building relocation moves us closer to completion of the pattern. Completion of what pattern? I don't know. But according to the seismic progression, we'll find out by sunset. The temperature downtown has dropped 15 degrees in the past hour. Not weather-related cooling, this is something else. The air tastes metallic, like the moment before lightning strikes. Every glass surface in the city is fogging up despite the dropping humidity. The sound of grinding concrete has developed an almost musical quality, like a massive pipe organ playing a song just below the threshold of human hearing. Intercepted transmission, source unknown, 11:41 Central Standard Time. Phase 7 initiation confirmed. Geometric alignment proceeding within acceptable parameters. Estimated completion, 17:47 local time. All monitoring stations report stable manifestation fields. The anchor points are responding as calculated. End transmission. We have no record of this transmission in any official frequency. The voice was calm, professional, speaking English with no identifiable accent. It sounded like a mission control update for something we're not supposed to know about. I've been staring at Melira's research notes, trying to understand what she discovered. Her handwriting gets increasingly frantic across 3 notebooks, but one phrase keeps appearing: Houston chosen for the convergence. Chosen by whom? For what? The worst part isn't the impossible architecture or the evacuation chaos or even the growing certainty that we're completely out of our depth. The worst part is that the buildings seem happy. I know how that sounds, but there's no other word for it. The way they settle into their new positions, the almost musical harmony of their movement. It's like watching a puzzle solve itself, pieces finding where they belong for the first time. My radio crackles with another update from Unit 47. Command: Methodist Hospital has completed its rotation. It's facing east now. All the buildings that have moved today, they're all facing east. Toward downtown, I look out the window of our mobile command unit. He's right. Every relocated building, from massive towers to small office structures, has reoriented to face the city center. 47 buildings arranged in a perfect circle, all pointing inward like spokes on a wheel, or like points on a compass, all indicating the same destination. The radio crackles again. Different voice? Urgent. All units, be advised. We've got 3 more buildings beginning relocation sequence. 1 Allen Center, the Pennzoil Place, and Jesus Christ Space Center Houston is moving. The whole complex just lifted off its foundation. My hand tightens on the radio. Space Center Houston is 25 miles southeast of downtown. The circle is expanding. Status log continues. Next entry scheduled for hour 20. Pattern completion estimated 1747. Current personnel: 12. Acting Coordinator Vex, Engineer Hale, Seismologist Cross, 9 support staff. Personnel missing: Director Loon, Medical, Historian Grove, Location unknown. Civilian status: unknown, communication systems compromised. The sun is directly overhead now, and every shadow in the city points toward the same spot downtown. Even shadows that should be impossible. Shadows cast by buildings that are blocking their own light source. We have 6 hours until sunset. 6 hours until we find out what Houston is turning into. Houston Emergency Operations Center Mobile Unit Delta 7. Field Report #critical 001. Coordinator: Carries Vex. Time: 15:47 Central Standard Time. The completion hour. Location: City Hall Annex, 4th floor. Current position: unknown. The ground hasn't stopped shaking for the past 6 hours. Not earthquake tremors, something deeper, more deliberate. Like the entire city is being lifted and repositioned by invisible hands the size of mountains. From our position in the City Hall Annex, we can see the final 3 buildings sliding into their ritual positions. The sound is indescribable. Imagine a symphony of grinding concrete, screaming metal, and something that shouldn't exist. The bass note of reality being forcibly bent. The Wells Fargo Plaza moves like it's floating on water. 90 floors of glass and steel drifting northwest with impossible grace. Its shadow sweeps across downtown like a sundial marking the end of the world. Ronan hasn't spoken in 20 minutes. He's pressed against the window, his structural engineering brain trying to process the complete violation of every physical law he's ever understood. His breath fogs the glass in irregular patterns as he hyperventilates, and I can see his hands trembling as he grips his tablet like a lifeline. "The foundations," he whispers finally. "Where are the foundations going? 70 stories of building can't just float." Severick Cross is hunched over his seismic equipment, reading numbers that shouldn't exist. "The ground displacement is following geometric patterns," he calls out, his voice cracking. "Perfect mathematical precision. This isn't geological, it's architectural. Someone is redesigning Houston from the ground up." Maylira Grove stands at the eastern window, and for the first time since I've known her, she looks afraid. Her usual academic composure has cracked, revealing something raw underneath. "They're almost in position," she says. "The Pennzoil Place, One Shell Plaza, and the Heritage Plaza. Once they lock into their coordinates, the circle will be complete." "What circle?" Evara loomed demands from across the room. Our emergency management director has been barking orders into her radio for hours, but the only responses she gets are static or voices screaming about impossible things. Her emergency protocols, honed through decades of hurricanes and disasters, are utterly useless here. What goddamn circle, Melira? But I can see it now. From our elevation, the pattern is becoming visible. A perfect geometric mandala with downtown Houston as its center. Each relocated building marks a point on an enormous ritual circle spanning miles. The architectural precision is breathtaking and horrifying. Aerial imagery is coming through, Severick reports, patching his equipment into our mobile command system. The drone footage appears on our screens, and we all go silent. Houston has become a symbol. The buildings form concentric rings of geometric perfection, with the JP Chase Tower at the absolute center. From above, it looks like a massive compass rose or an arcane sigil carved into the urban landscape. Every street, every building, every structure repositioned with mathematical precision to create something that definitely wasn't meant for human eyes. How long have they been planning this? I whisper. Centuries, Melira says quietly. The original city planning, the building codes, even the street layouts, it was all designed to enable this moment. Houston wasn't built randomly. It was prepared. Evara's radio crackles with a transmission that makes us all freeze. Emergency command. This is Highway Patrol Unit 47. We've reached the city limits and there are no city limits. The interstate just stops, like someone erased the road with a giant eraser. Beyond that is just nothing, empty space. Houston is completely cut off from the rest of Texas. The Pennzoil Place settles into its final position with a sound like thunder rolling backwards. The Heritage Plaza follows, sliding across 6 city blocks like it's ice skating on concrete. Emergency sirens wail from every direction, but they're becoming distorted, the frequencies stretching and warping as reality itself begins to buckle. One more, Melira breathes. Just one shell plaza, and then the building moves. 52 stories of concrete and glass rise from their foundation and begin drifting southwest, trailing power lines and broken water mains like mechanical tentacles. The building's movement is hypnotic, almost graceful, until you remember that there are people inside. Office workers pressed against windows, their faces pale with terror as their entire world literally shifts around them. We have to evacuate the city, Evara says, but her voice lacks conviction. Full population evacuation. Call in the National Guard. Establish perimeters. With what roads? I interrupt. Half the evacuation routes don't lead where they used to. GPS is completely useless. And you heard highway patrol. There might not even be an outside to evacuate to anymore. One shell plaza settles into its designated position with a finality that reverberates through our bones. The geometric pattern is complete. For exactly 13 seconds, Houston is completely silent. Then the emergency alert system comes alive. Every screen in the city, televisions, phones, digital billboards, electronic road signs, displays the same message simultaneously. But it's not in English. It's not in any human language. The symbols shift and writhe like living things, burning themselves into our retinas as we stare. The alert system's mechanical voice begins speaking, but the words come from everywhere at once. Not just from speakers or devices, but from the air itself, from the walls, from inside our own heads. Dimensional anchor established. Houston metropolitan area now operates under revised physical parameters. Standard Euclidean geometry no longer applies. Citizens will adapt or be absorbed into the architectural matrix. Resistance is structurally inefficient. The building we're in, the City Hall Annex, shudders violently. Through the windows, I watch our reflection split into multiple images, as if we're looking through a kaleidoscope. The room appears to be existing in several slightly different locations simultaneously. Phase variance detected, Severick reports, his voice barely audible over the reality-warping vibrations. The building is existing in multiple dimensional positions at once. We're not fully anchored in any single version of Houston anymore. Ronan stumbles backward from the window, his face ghost white. The structural integrity readings are impossible. According to my instruments, this building is simultaneously on solid ground, floating 30 feet in the air, and buried underground. All at the same time, the emergency alert voice continues, and now I recognize something underneath the mechanical translation. An intelligence vast and ancient, something that views human consciousness the way we might view bacteria in a petri dish. Integration phase commencing. Human neural patterns will be incorporated into urban infrastructure for optimal efficiency. Cooperation will reduce processing time. Through the fractured windows, I can see people in the streets below moving in perfect synchronization. Not running in panic anymore, but walking with mechanical precision toward the geometric center of the city. Their movements are too coordinated, too purposeful, like they're being remotely controlled. We need to get out of here, I say, but even as the words leave my mouth, I realize the futility. The door we entered through now opens onto a corridor that extends impossibly far in both directions. The elevator buttons show floor numbers that don't exist. Infinity, -infinity, square root -1, and something that looks like mathematical equations written in blood. Avara tries her radio one more time. Emergency command to all units. Anyone receiving, please respond. The only answer is the voice from the emergency alert system, now speaking directly through her radio. Emergency protocols are obsolete. New management structure implementing. Resistance increases processing time. Cooperation reduces discomfort. Melira grabs my arm, her fingers digging in with desperate strength. There's something you need to know, she whispers. About my family, about Houston, about why this is happening. But if I tell you, there's no going back. Everything you think you know about reality will change. Before I can answer, the building lurches violently. We're thrown against the walls as the City Hall Annex begins its own movement, sliding through dimensions like a ship navigating between layers of existence. Through the kaleidoscope windows, I catch glimpses of Houston in different states. Somewhere the buildings are made of organic material, somewhere they're transparent, somewhere they exist only as mathematical concepts given form. The emergency alert system speaks one final message, and this time I understand it's speaking directly to us. Carries Vex, Infrastructure Coordinator. Your knowledge of urban systems makes you suitable for integration. Report to Dimensional Anchor Point for processing. Resistance will be noted in your permanent record. Severic's seismic equipment explodes in a shower of sparks. Ronan's structural analysis tablet screen cracks and begins displaying architectural blueprints for buildings that exist in impossible geometries. Avara's radio melts into slag, the plastic and metal flowing together like liquid. And somewhere in the distance, I can hear Houston itself breathing. A vast mechanical respiration as the city settles into its new role as something that was never meant to exist in our dimension. The last thing I manage to document before our equipment fails completely is the timestamp on my emergency log. 15:59 Central Standard Time. Dimensional integration complete. Houston status. Relocated to coordinates unknown. Personnel status. Trapped in architectural matrix. Next action. Survival protocols. Standard procedures no longer applicable. Outside our fractured windows, the sun sets in 3 different directions simultaneously, and I realize that we're no longer in the same Houston we woke up in this morning. We might not even be on the same Earth. End of critical report. #critical001. Warning. Document integrity compromised by dimensional variance. Filing status. Unknown. Standard archival system no longer accessible. Emergency log day 1 after completion. Houston Dimensional Zone former City Hall location. Recorder. Carries Vex. By voice memo. Written systems unreliable. Time. Approximately 14:30. Clocks showing conflicting readings. The entity spoke to us for 3 hours after the ritual completed. Its voice came through every emergency speaker, every phone, every piece of electronic equipment capable of producing sound. Not words exactly, more like concepts pressed directly into our minds, translated into language our brains could process. Told us we were safe, that Houston now existed in a stable dimensional pocket where the normal rules of physics were suggestions rather than laws, that we could learn to navigate this new reality if we were careful. If we were smart. It didn't tell us how to find food when the grocery stores phase in and out of existence every few hours. Ronan figured out the pattern first. The buildings don't move randomly. They follow mathematical progressions based on their original construction dates and architectural styles. Art Deco buildings shift every 73 minutes. Modern glass towers follow a different rhythm, cycling every 127 minutes. The older brick structures, the ones built before Houston's big oil boom, those stay relatively stable. It's like the city is breathing, he said this morning, sketching diagrams on the back of salvaged paper. His left arm is still in a makeshift sling from when the Wells Fargo Plaza materialized half overlapping the building we were standing in. We had maybe 30 seconds to get to a different floor before the architecture tried to occupy the same space. I've seen what happens when that fails. The Simmons woman from accounting didn't make it out of the elevator in time. We don't talk about the screaming sounds the building made as it digested her. Avara hasn't spoken since yesterday. She sits in what used to be the Emergency Coordination Center, staring at dead monitors and clutching protocol manuals that have become completely useless. Sometimes she moves her lips like she's reading procedures aloud, but no sound comes out. The weight of realizing that every emergency plan, every carefully crafted response system, every bit of authority she built her career on has become meaningless. It broke something fundamental in her. I understand the feeling. My city planning expertise is almost worthless now that streets can lead to buildings that weren't there when you started walking. Almost, but not completely. The dimensional shifts follow urban planning logic, just expanded. Buildings want to be near compatible structures. Commercial zones cluster together even when they're phasing between realities. Residential areas maintain their neighborhood bonds. The city's bones are still there, just flexible now. Maylira disappeared for 6 hours this morning. Found her in the basement levels of what used to be the Heritage Plaza, which is currently existing in the same spatial coordinates as a Walgreens and somehow making it work. She was sitting cross-legged in front of a wall covered in symbols that definitely weren't there before Houston's transformation. My grandmother's journals mentioned this, she said without looking at me. The symbols, they appear when the ritual reaches completion phase. They're instructions for people like us. People like us? Survivors. The ones who stay conscious during the transition instead of being absorbed into the city's new neural network. She traced one of the symbols with her fingertip. Most people just fade into the background. Their consciousness becomes part of the building's dreams. But some of us maintain individual awareness. The symbol she was touching looked like architectural blueprints drawn by someone having a fever dream. Lines that folded in on themselves, measurements that used symbols instead of numbers, structural elements that couldn't exist in normal three-dimensional space. Can you read them? Some. This one talks about resource acquisition in dimensional overlap zones. This section describes how to identify stable architectural spaces. She pointed to a cluster of interwoven lines near the center. And this is about finding other survivor groups. That got my attention. We'd been assuming we were alone in this transformed Houston, but radio signals have been crackling with fragments of human voices. Most of it is gibberish, people who got caught in the dimensional shift talking in architectural metaphors, describing their experiences as becoming load-bearing or achieving structural integrity with the foundation consciousness. But some voices sound normal, scared, confused, but human. Severick Cross was one of those voices until this morning. His seismic monitoring station in the energy corridor managed to maintain dimensional stability for almost 18 hours after the completion. Long enough for him to record detailed measurements of what he called reality substrate oscillations. His last transmission came through at 11:47. The building is It's trying to teach me something about deep structures, about the foundation layer beneath Houston that we never knew existed. It doesn't hurt. It's actually kind of beautiful. I can see the entire city's root system now, all the connections we couldn't perceive before. Carries, if you're listening, the entity isn't the enemy. It's trying to protect us from something else. Something that's coming through the cracks between static, then nothing. I've been trying to raise him every hour since. The seismic station is still broadcasting, but the readings don't make sense anymore. Instead of earthquake measurements, the data stream shows architectural blueprints. Complex designs for buildings that look like they're designed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The water situation is becoming critical. The city's pipes exist in normal space, but the buildings they service keep shifting between dimensional states. Turn on a faucet in a bathroom and half the time you get water. The other half, you get this oily liquid that smells like copper and tastes like electricity. Ronan thinks it might be what he calls dimensional runoff, matter that gets displaced when buildings phase between realities. We're collecting rainwater now. At least the sky seems to work normally, though the sun takes weird paths across it sometimes. This morning it rose in the northeast and moved in a perfect spiral before settling into the southern quarter of the sky for what felt like 6 hours. Food is easier, strangely. The grocery stores phase in and out, but when they're accessible, the shelves are fully stocked. The entity told us that the dimensional pocket maintains certain essential human requirements automatically. But you have to time it right, and you have to know which buildings are safe to enter during their solid phases. I've been mapping the patterns. The HEB on Montrose cycles every 94 minutes and remains stable for exactly 12 minutes. Long enough to grab supplies if you're fast and don't get trapped inside when it phases back out. The Whole Foods downtown has a longer cycle but only stays solid for 3 minutes. Not worth the risk unless you're desperate. The strangest part is the other people we've found. There's a group of construction workers holed up in the Toyota Center. Apparently, large sports venues maintain better dimensional stability because of their size and structural redundancy. They've figured out how to modify the building's architecture to create anchor points that resist phase shifting. And there's Dr. Sarah Chan, a materials scientist who was visiting the University of Houston when the ritual completed. She's developed what she calls dimensional mapping techniques, using equipment that shouldn't be able to function in our current reality but somehow does. Her maps show Houston as it exists now, a layered city where multiple versions of the same space can be occupied simultaneously. According to Chen's measurements, we're not just in a dimensional pocket. We're in the center of what she calls a reality stabilization matrix. Houston was chosen because the city sits on convergent underground systems, water tables, gas pipelines, subway foundations, and older infrastructure that goes back further than official records show. The entity needed an anchor point, she explained over crackling radio contact. Somewhere with deep roots and complex infrastructure. Houston's underground systems go down much deeper than anyone realized. There are structures down there that predate the city's founding by centuries. That matches what Melira found in her grandmother's journals. References to foundation guardians and architectural bloodlines that have been watching Houston's development for generations, waiting for the right moment to activate dormant systems built into the city's deepest levels. The really disturbing part is that Chen's instruments are detecting similar energy signatures in other major cities. Dallas is showing early-stage architectural anomalies. Austin's emergency alert systems have been broadcasting impossible building relocation notices. San Antonio's downtown core experienced a 12-minute dimensional flutter yesterday, where several buildings briefly appeared to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Whatever's happening in Houston, it's spreading. But there's something else Chun discovered that she only mentioned in whispered radio transmissions late at night. Her equipment picks up massive movement signatures at the edges of Houston's dimensional bubble. Something enormous circling the city's new reality boundary. Something that makes the entity's presence feel small by comparison. The entity keeps talking about protection protocols, she told me during last night's check-in. Protection from what? What was it trying to keep out by transforming Houston into this pocket dimension fortress? I don't have answers. I'm just trying to keep our small group alive while documenting everything for whoever might find these records someday. If the dimensional pocket fails, if we find a way back to normal reality, if other cities face the same choice Houston did, Ronan thinks we can adapt. Build a new kind of society that works with the dimensional architecture instead of fighting it. Ivara just stares at her useless protocol manuals. Melira translates more symbols every day, learning the city's new language of impossible geometry. And I keep making these logs because someone needs to record what it's like to live in a city that dreams. The sunset tonight painted the sky in colors that don't have names. The buildings cast shadows that fell upward. And somewhere in the distance, I swear I could hear Houston singing. End of log. Resource status: 3 days water, 8 days food. Team status: for active, 1 catatonic. Next objective: locate other survivor groups, establish supply network. Personal note: the city is beautiful now. That's the most terrifying thing of all. Personal log carries Vex. Day 5 after completion. Location: City Hall sub-basement level 3, currently stable. Time: clock displays impossible symbols. Trust is a foundation. You build on it layer by layer until you have something solid enough to support the weight of survival. Then someone takes a sledgehammer to the cornerstone and everything collapses. Melira told us the truth this morning. All of it. We were huddled in what used to be the record storage room, sharing the last of our scavenged water bottles. The walls here are thick concrete, pre-1960s construction, and they seem to resist the dimensional shifting better than the newer buildings. Ronan was leaning against the far wall, favoring his left side where the falling debris had caught him during yesterday's phase shift collapse. His breathing was shallow, each exhale a small cloud in the unnaturally cold air. Ivara sat in the corner, staring at her emergency radio like it might suddenly start working again. She'd been cycling through frequencies for hours, desperate for some connection to the outside world, some protocol that might make sense of our situation. Her usually immaculate emergency coordinator appearance had degraded into something hollow-eyed and frantic. "There's something I need to tell you," Melira said quietly. Her voice carried a weight I'd never heard before. "About my family. About why I knew this would happen." I looked up from the architectural diagrams I'd been studying, blueprints of the tunnel system that might give us a route to the ritual center. "What do you mean, you knew?" She reached into her jacket and pulled out a leather journal, its pages yellowed with age. "The Grove family has been in Houston for 6 generations. We've been guardians, you could say, keepers of a secret that was supposed to stay buried." Ronan's head came up, his engineer's mind immediately skeptical despite our circumstances. Guardians of what? The thing that's been speaking through the emergency alerts. The entity that's transformed our city. Melira opened the journal, revealing pages covered in symbols that looked disturbingly familiar. The same geometric patterns we'd seen carved into building foundations. It's been imprisoned here for over a century. The ritual wasn't meant to release it. It was meant to contain it. The cold in the room seemed to intensify. I felt something twist in my stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. "You're saying your family has been keeping some kind of, what, cosmic horror locked under Houston?" Ivara's voice cracked slightly. "And you never thought to mention this?" "The containment was working," Melira said desperately. "The entity was dormant, sealed away by the original ritual. But something changed. The city grew too large, too complex. The urban sprawl disrupted the containment patterns. The entity started to wake up." I stood up, pacing the small space as pieces fell into place. The buildings rearranging themselves. They're not just moving randomly. They're forming a new containment pattern. Aren't they? Yes. Melira's eyes were bright with unshed tears. But containment was never meant to be permanent. It was a stopgap measure while we found a way to send it back. My great-great-grandmother's journal describes what it was running from. What it was trying to escape. "Running from what?" Ronan asked. Before Melira could answer, The building around us shuddered. Not the usual phase shift tremor, but something deeper. The lights flickered, and for a moment, I could have sworn I saw through the walls to the street outside. Except the street was full of buildings that shouldn't exist, architectural impossibilities that hurt to look at directly. "It's getting stronger," Melira whispered. "The containment is failing. And if it breaks free completely, then what?" I demanded. "Then what's been hunting it for the past 100 years will come here. And Houston, hell, maybe the entire planet, will become a battlefield in a cosmic war we can't even comprehend." Avara laughed, but it was the sound of someone's sanity fraying at the edges. Of course it gets worse. Because giant reality warping entities trapped under major metropolitan areas apparently aren't enough. There has to be something even more horrible chasing them. The emergency radio in her lap suddenly crackled to life. Static filled the room, then cleared to reveal a voice I'd hoped never to hear again. Severick's voice, but wrong somehow. Distorted. "Carries? Can you hear me? I'm in the monitoring station. The seismic readings, they're impossible. The entity isn't just contained here. It's being held by something else. Something that's been feeding off the city's life force." My blood went cold. "Severick? Where are you? We thought you were lost when the station phased into the ground." I'm still here, but not here. The station exists in the spaces between buildings now. I can see everything, Carries. The whole pattern. The entity isn't the real threat. It's the prison warden. And the prisoners are trying to break free. The radio erupted in static. Then Severick's voice came through again, more distorted than before. "They're coming through the Foundation. The things it was holding back. They're using the ritual circle as a gateway. You have to stop the reversal process. You have to let the entity maintain containment, even if it means." The transmission cut off in a burst of static that sounded almost like screaming. Ronan tried to stand, gasping as his injured ribs protested. "That's not possible. The seismic station was completely buried. He can't be alive down there." "He's not alive," Melira said quietly. "Not anymore. The entity, it preserves consciousness, stores it in the city's infrastructure. That's how it's been learning about us, adapting to our modern world. It needs human minds to understand how to operate in our reality." I stared at her, feeling the last foundation of trust crumble away. "How long have you known this?" "Since the first day. Since the buildings started moving." Tears were streaming down her face now. "My family's journals describe the preservation process. The entity doesn't just imprison minds, it offers them a choice. Become part of its consciousness, help it understand humanity, and in return, you get to continue existing in some form." "You knew Severick was still conscious down there and you didn't tell us?" "Because there's only one way to free him." Melira's voice rose to a shout. "The same way to free everyone the entity has preserved over the past century. We have to complete the reversal ritual. But that means releasing everything it's been holding back. The things that were hunting it, the cosmic horrors that made it flee to our dimension in the first place." Avara stood up slowly, her hand moving to the emergency flare gun on her belt. "So our choices are: let the entity keep our city and everyone in it as some kind of dimensional prison, or release it and let something even worse take over?" "There's a third option," Melira said desperately. "Someone has to take the entity's place, become the new anchor point for the containment, sacrifice their consciousness to maintain the prison." The room fell silent except for Ronan's labored breathing. I could feel the weight of that revelation settling over us like a burial shroud. "Who?" I asked quietly. "Someone with deep knowledge of the city's infrastructure. Someone who understands the patterns, the connections. Someone the entity has been studying closely enough to trust with the containment protocols." She was looking directly at me. "No." Ronan's voice was firm despite his pain. "Absolutely not. There has to be another way." "There isn't," Melira said. "The ritual requires a willing consciousness to anchor the containment. Someone has to choose to become the prison warden. Forever. The building shuddered again, more violently this time. Through the walls, I could hear sounds that shouldn't exist. The grinding of impossibly large machinery. The whisper of things moving through dimensions we couldn't perceive. How long do we have? I asked. Melira consulted her journal. The entity's containment is failing exponentially. Maybe 12 hours before complete breakdown. Less if the things it's been holding back start pushing from the other side. Avara's radio crackled again. This time it was the entity's voice, the one that had been speaking through the emergency alerts. The Guardians have told you the truth. The choice approaches. Houston's children must decide. Preserve the prison or face the prisoners. And if we choose the prison? I asked the radio. Then one of you becomes the new warden. The city returns to normal. The people return to their lives. Only the warden remains, conscious and eternal, holding the darkness at bay. For how long? The static seemed to pause, considering. Until the stars burn out, or until someone else chooses to take your place. Whichever comes first. Ronan grabbed my arm with surprising strength. Carries, don't. Please. We'll find another way. But I was already thinking about the city above us. Millions of people who had no idea their reality was balanced on a knife's edge. The children in the schools that had somehow remained stable during the transformation. The families huddled in emergency shelters, waiting for normal to return. I need to see the ritual site, I said finally. I need to understand exactly what I'd be signing up for. Melira nodded, closing her journal. The tunnel system leads directly to the containment chamber. It's about 2 miles through the old steam tunnels. But the entity has been decorating down there, preparing for the transition. Decorating how? It's been building a control room, a place where the warden can monitor the entire containment system. It's extensive. I looked around the room at my companions. Ronan, injured but determined to find alternatives. Ivara, clinging to her emergency protocols even as they became meaningless. Melira, carrying the weight of her family's secret and the guilt of generations. Then we go, I said. All of us. We see what we're dealing with and then we make the choice. But even as I said it, I knew the choice was already made. Had been made the moment I'd first seen that impossible permit request 5 days ago. The city had been preparing me, teaching me, showing me the patterns I'd need to understand. Houston needed a warden, and I was the only one who could read the blueprints. The building shuddered again, and somewhere in the distance, something roared. A sound like the death of stars, like the screaming of broken dimensions. Time was running out. Personal log carries Vex. Day 5 after completion. Note, this may be my last entry as a free consciousness. Status. Proceeding to containment chamber. Final authorization, K. Vex, Urban Infrastructure Specialist. Soon to be Warden of Houston. Houston Infrastructure Emergency Log. Coordinator, carries Vex. Day 7, the true pattern. Location, City Hall Subbasement Level 4. Dimensional anchor, stable. Time, 14:22 Central Standard Time. Estimated, chronometers unreliable in deep structure. The blueprints spread across the emergency bunker table like surgical diagrams of a patient we'd been misdiagnosing for a week. Melira's hands shook as she traced the underground tunnel networks with her finger, following lines that connected every major building foundation in downtown Houston in a pattern that made my chest tight with recognition. It's not random, she whispered for the 3rd time. It was never random. Ronan shifted in his makeshift wheelchair, the bandages around his torso dark with old blood. The dimensional shift 3 days ago had crushed 2 of his ribs when the building tried to exist in the same space as a parking garage. But his mind was still sharp as a blade. Show her the ley line maps again. Melira unrolled another set of documents. These ones were older, the paper yellow with age and marked with symbols that made my vision blur if I looked at them too long. Her family's archives, she'd called them, for generations of secrets that made her betrayal feel like a scalpel between my shoulder blades every time I looked at her. The Grove family weren't servants of the entity, she said. her voice raw from exhaustion and guilt. "We were its prison guards. Have been for over a century." I wanted to hit her. The rage still lived in my chest like a burning coal, even after 3 days of her explanations. "Prison guards don't help the prisoner escape, Melira. We didn't help it escape. We followed the containment protocols exactly as written." She jabbed at a section of the map where 7 underground passages converged beneath what was now the ritual center. When the entity showed signs of breakthrough, the protocols required us to activate the emergency binding. The architectural ritual was the emergency binding. Ronan leaned forward, wincing. "You're saying the building movement wasn't the entity breaking free. It was you locking it up tighter." "Yes, the ritual creates a stable dimensional anchor point. A prison made of twisted space and urban infrastructure. Houston was chosen because it sits on a convergence of natural energy lines that run through the Gulf Coast clay formations. The underground tunnel system was built to channel that energy into the binding pattern." I stared at the maps until my eyes watered. The tunnel networks did follow the building positions, both the original positions and where they'd moved to complete the ritual circle. Every major foundation connected to an underground passage that led to the central chamber we'd discovered yesterday, where reality bent in ways that made Avara start screaming until Severick had to sedate her. "What exactly are we dealing with here?" I asked. "What is this thing that requires an entire city as a prison?" Melira's hands stilled on the maps. When she looked up, her eyes held the weight of inherited nightmares. "We call it the sprawl. It's not from our dimension. It's from a place where consciousness and physical space are the same thing. Where thoughts become architecture and architecture becomes alive. It feeds on urban environments, converts them into extensions of itself." The grinding sound that had been plaguing Houston's buildings for months suddenly made horrible sense. Not mechanical stress, digestion. The entity trying to consume the city's infrastructure from within. "It got loose once before," Melira continued. 1900. The Galveston hurricane wasn't a natural disaster. It was the sprawl manifesting, trying to remake the Texas coast into its feeding ground. My great-great-grandmother helped contain it then, but the cost. She gestured at the ritual circle. "This is what containment looks like. You trap it in an architectural prison and hope the binding holds." Ronan was running calculations on his tablet, the screen flickering as the device struggled with the dimensional interference. "How long do the bindings usually last?" The Galveston binding held for 125 years. This one should hold for longer. Houston's infrastructure is more complex, more energy to draw from. But what?" Melira pointed to a section of the map marked with red ink. "The sprawl wasn't alone when it came through. There's something else, something worse, using the dimensional weak points it creates. The prison isn't just keeping the sprawl contained, it's keeping the other thing out." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Other thing? We don't have a name for it. The family records just call it the hunger. It consumes entire dimensional layers, leaving nothing but void. The sprawl was trying to escape from it when it broke through into our reality. If we break the binding to free Houston, we let in something worse." I sank into a chair, the weight of 7 days of crisis finally hitting me. The emergency alert system, when it started speaking in that voice that wasn't quite human. That was the sprawl. Yes, it's been trying to communicate, to warn us. The building movements, the dimensional shifts, they're not attacks. They're desperate attempts to reinforce the binding before the hunger finds this dimensional layer. Ronan's tablet chimed with an incoming signal. The screen showed a message that made my blood freeze. "Dimensional breach detected. Outer boundary compromised. Estimated time to full manifestation, 14 hours. Binding integrity, 67% and falling. Recommendation: conscious anchor required for stabilization." Conscious anchor? I looked between Melira and Ronan. "What does that mean?" Melira's face went pale. "The binding was designed to be maintained by human consciousness. Someone has to become part of the ritual structure, their awareness woven into the dimensional anchor points. They become the prison's intelligence, able to adapt and strengthen the binding as needed. For how long? Permanently. Their consciousness becomes part of Houston's infrastructure forever. They can communicate through the city's systems, emergency alerts, traffic networks, building automation, but they can never leave, never be fully human again. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Someone would have to sacrifice their humanity to keep both the sprawl contained and the hunger locked out. And looking at the maps, at the complexity of the binding ritual, there was only one person with the specific expertise needed. It has to be me, I said quietly. I know Houston's infrastructure better than anyone. The emergency management protocols, the building systems, the underground networks. I'm the only one who could function as the anchor consciousness. Carrie's no. Ronan's voice was sharp with pain and fear. There has to be another way. We can evacuate the city, let the binding fail, deal with the consequences. The consequences are the end of this dimensional layer, Melira interrupted. The hunger doesn't just consume cities. It consumes the space they exist in. If it gets through here, it won't stop with Houston. It'll spread until there's nothing left but void. I stood up, my legs shaky but my resolve crystallizing. The grinding sounds from the building above had gotten worse in the past hour. Through the reinforced walls, I could hear the sprawl's voice echoing through the emergency alert system, no longer trying to sound human. Binding degradation accelerating. Hunger proximity increasing. Conscious anchor required. Please, help us help you. How do we do it? I asked Melira. The consciousness transfer, how does it work? She pulled out one final document, this one covered in diagrams that hurt to look at directly. There's a chamber directly beneath the ritual center. Pre-Columbian construction, but modified by the original binding team. The anchor point exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. If you enter it willingly, with full understanding of the sacrifice, your consciousness expands to fill the dimensional framework. And then you become Houston's guardian. You can communicate through every system in the city, monitor the binding strength, adapt the defenses as needed. You'll be aware of every building, every street, every underground tunnel. The city becomes your body, its infrastructure your nervous system. I looked at Ronan, seeing the grief already building in his eyes. 3 years of partnership, of late nights reviewing building codes and arguing about structural integrity. 3 years of friendship that was about to end in a way that made death seem simple. I need you to do something for me, I told him. After the transfer, I'm going to need someone who understands my thought processes. Someone who can help me learn to think like a city instead of a person. Will you be my liaison? He nodded, tears streaming down his face. Always carries, however long it takes. The building shuddered around us, reality shifting as the sprawl fought to maintain the binding. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear Ivara screaming again as another wave of dimensional distortion washed over the city. Time was running out. End of log entry personal archive. Next action. Proceed to anchor chamber. Final note. If anyone reads this, remember that some sacrifices save worlds. Houston will survive. Make sure the rest of Texas knows why. Houston Infrastructure Emergency Log. Entry classification. Final operational record. Coordinator, Carries Vex. Day 8 hour of choice. Location, Subsurface Ritual Center, downtown Houston. Recording via emergency beacon battery critical. The tunnels beneath Houston weren't built by human hands. We've been descending for 40 minutes through passages that curve in ways that hurt to look at directly. Melira leads with a confidence that comes from generations of family knowledge, while Ronan limps behind me, his breathing labored from the injuries sustained in yesterday's dimensional collapse. His structural calculations, scrawled on water-stained city planning documents, are the only thing standing between us and complete mathematical chaos. The walls down here pulse with a rhythm that matches no earthly heartbeat. Bioluminescent symbols, the same geometric patterns we've seen carved into building foundations, trace themselves along the curved surfaces, appearing and fading like thoughts half remembered. The air tastes of copper and ozone, with an underlying sweetness that makes my teeth ache. How much further? Ronan asks, his voice echoing strangely in the non-Euclidean space. He's carrying the modified emergency beacon we jerry-rigged to interface with the ritual mechanism, its weight seeming to pull him toward the tunnel floor. We're directly beneath the geometric center now, Melira replies without turning. The chamber is just ahead. But Carrie's. She stops and faces me, her expression heavy with ancestral guilt. What we're about to attempt has never been tried before. The equations Ronan worked out are theoretical. If we're wrong, Houston falls into whatever dimensional pocket the entity was trying to escape. I finish. And those things at the barrier break through. We've been over this. Above us, the city groans. For the past 6 hours, the cosmic horrors that the imprisoned entity was meant to contain have been pressing against Houston's reality bubble. Buildings phase in and out of existence as the dimensional walls strain. Avara's voice crackles through our radios periodically, coordinating the evacuation of civilians from the increasingly unstable downtown core. But we all know there's nowhere to run. If this fails, nowhere will be far enough. The tunnel opens into a vast circular chamber that defies architectural possibility. The ceiling stretches impossibly high, vanishing into darkness that seems to move independently of any light source. In the center, a complex geometric mechanism rises from the floor, part machinery, part organic growth, part mathematical abstraction made physical. It's beautiful and terrible, like looking at the bones of reality itself. The entity waits beside it. What I see depends on the angle I approach from. Sometimes it's a shifting column of darkness with too many eyes. Sometimes it's a geometric pattern that writhes across multiple dimensions. Sometimes it looks almost human, if humans were made of starlight and architectural blueprints. You came, it says, and its voice resonates through the stone, through my bones, through the emergency beacon speakers. Good. Time grows short. Ronan immediately begins setting up his equipment, connecting the beacon to junction points on the mechanism with cables we salvaged from demolished buildings. His movements are precise despite his injuries, every action guided by calculations that treat impossible geometry as merely another engineering challenge. The barriers above grow thin. The entity continues. My siblings sense weakness. They have been patient for eons, but patience ends. If I cannot maintain the prison, you're not maintaining anything, I interrupt. You're trapped just like Houston is trapped. This ritual was meant to create an anchor point so you could escape, wasn't it? The entity's form shifts, becoming more geometric, more honest. Yes, freedom after millennia of containment. But I underestimated human resilience. Your species adapts to impossibility with such creativity. I had not anticipated that the anchor could work in reverse. Melira pulls ancient diagrams from her pack, hand-drawn schematics that show the ritual mechanism's true purpose. My family has guarded this knowledge for 12 generations. The original binding wasn't meant to trap the entity forever. It was meant to create a stable dimensional lock that could be operated from either side. A prison with 2 keys, Ronan says without looking up from his work. Prisoner or guard can open it, but only if both agree. He connects the final cable and activates the beacon's modified transmission array. Immediately, the mechanism begins to respond, geometric patterns cycling through configurations that make my eyes water. The calculations are sound. He continues, his voice tight with pain and exhaustion. But someone has to remain connected to the mechanism to maintain the lock. The human consciousness becomes part of the dimensional anchor. It's not reversible. The weight of what he's not saying settles over us like Houston's summer heat. Someone has to sacrifice their humanity to save the city, to save the world. The entity speaks directly into my mind. You understand the choice. Your consciousness or mine. One of us must remain to hold the lock. Above us, something massive impacts the dimensional barrier. The chamber shudders, dust raining from the impossible ceiling. Avara's voice crackles through the radio. Carries, whatever you're doing down there, do it fast. The eastern barrier just developed a crack you could drive a truck through. I look at Ronan, who's monitoring the mechanism's readings with the dedication of someone who knows his time is limited. His structural analysis skills, his engineering knowledge, he's the only one who truly understands how to operate the reversal process. But his injuries, I can maintain the connection, he says quietly, reading my expression. My body's failing anyway. The dimensional stress from yesterday's collapse did something to my cellular structure. I can feel it breaking down. Ronan, you can't. I can and I will. He looks up from the mechanism, and for a moment his face carries all the stubborn professionalism that made him the best structural engineer in Houston. This is just another engineering problem, Carries. Calculate the load, distribute the stress, maintain the integrity of the system. I've been doing it my whole career. The entity's voice echoes through the chamber. He speaks truth. His consciousness is already partially integrated with the mechanism. The transition would be smoother. Another impact above, stronger this time. The radio erupts with Avara's panicked voice. Multiple barrier failures. I'm seeing something the size of a city block pressing against the north wall. Carries. Please tell me you have a solution. Ronan's hands dance across the mechanism's controls, adjusting parameters with an intuition that goes beyond engineering into something approaching artistry. The reversal sequence is ready, but I need someone to operate the Houston end while I maintain the anchor. Someone who understands the city's infrastructure well enough to guide the buildings back to their original positions. That's me, I say, moving to the secondary control array. The interface is part mechanical switches, part organic neural connections, part pure mathematical abstraction. When I place my hands on it, I can suddenly sense every building in Houston, their positions, their structural integrity, their dimensional stability. It's like having the entire city as an extension of my nervous system. The sequence has to be perfect, Melira warns. If even one building returns to the wrong position, the whole network could collapse into paradox. I close my eyes and feel Houston spread out around me like a three-dimensional map written in steel and concrete. Every structure pulses with its own signature, its own desire to return home. The Chase Tower yearns for 600 Travis Street. Heritage Plaza strains toward its proper place on Fannin. Even the smallest buildings whisper their coordinates like prayers. Beginning reversal sequence, Ronan announces. Carries, I need you to guide them home, one at a time in order of structural dependency. I start with the foundation buildings, the ones that other structures rely on for dimensional stability. Each successful relocation sends a wave of relief through the city's architectural nervous system. But with each building that returns, I can feel Ronan's consciousness integrating deeper with the mechanism, becoming less human and more something else. The siblings grow desperate. The entity observes, its form beginning to fade as the dimensional lock strengthens. They throw themselves against the barriers with increasing violence. The chamber shakes with impacts that sound like the death of stars. But building by building, Houston is coming home. 3/4 through the sequence, Ronan's voice changes, taking on harmonic overtones that resonate through dimensions. Carries, I can see the whole pattern now. The city, the ritual, the reason Houston was chosen. We're not just undoing what happened. We're creating something new. A permanent guardian system. What do you mean? The entity was right about one thing. This intersection of dimensional lines makes Houston special. With the right consciousness anchoring the system, the city could detect future supernatural threats, provide early warning, even intervene if necessary. I guide the last building into position, a small office complex that slots into place with an almost audible sigh of relief. Houston is whole again, but changed. I can feel the difference in the city's dimensional signature, like a building that's been renovated, but retains the memory of its original architecture. Sequence complete, I announce. All buildings have returned to baseline positions. The entity's form has become translucent, its prison transforming back into what it was always meant to be, a lock rather than a cage. The anchor holds. My siblings retreat, seeking easier prey. Houston is safe, but Ronan's consciousness has fully integrated with the mechanism. When he speaks now, his voice comes from the stone itself, from the mathematical foundations of reality. Not just safe, Carries. Protected. I can feel every supernatural threat approaching the city. Every dimensional anomaly. Every attempt to repeat what happened here. Above us, the impacts have stopped. Avara's voice comes through the radio, filled with exhausted relief. The barriers are stabilizing. The things outside are withdrawing. Whatever you did, it worked. The entity addresses me one final time. The Guardian consciousness requires connection to the city's infrastructure to function properly. Emergency systems, communication networks, the alert mechanisms your people depend upon. He will become Houston's voice when danger approaches. I understand. Ronan won't just be trapped in this chamber. He'll become part of Houston itself. Every emergency alert, every infrastructure warning, every protective system that keeps the city safe will carry his consciousness. Will he still be him? He will be what he chooses to be. The entity replies as it fades completely. As will you all. Houston remembers what happened here. That memory will shape how your people face future impossibilities. The mechanism cycles down to a low, steady hum, not the grinding we've grown used to, but something that sounds almost like contentment, like a city breathing. Carries. Ronan's voice comes from everywhere and nowhere, carrying the acoustic signature of Houston itself. I need you to go back up there. Help Avara rebuild the emergency protocols. The city's going to need new procedures for supernatural threats. Ronan, I'm still me. Just more. I can see every street, every building, every person trying to rebuild their lives after this. I can protect them in ways I never could before. This isn't an ending, Carries. It's the beginning of something better. As I gather the equipment and prepare to leave the chamber, one final impact echoes from above. Not violent, but gentle. Like something massive settling into place with perfect precision. Houston is home. End of field log. Operator. Carries Vex. Infrastructure Coordinator. Status. Mission accomplished. Dimensional anchor established. Guardian system. Active. Next phase. Surface reconstruction and protocol development. Houston Emergency Management System. Infrastructure Monitoring Division. Consciousness Interface Log Number 0001. Date: April 14th, 2025, 30 days post-restoration. Primary Operator. Carries Vex. Integrated Consciousness. Time: 14:22 Central Standard Time. Strange having a timestamp again. For those 7 days when reality folded in on itself, time moved like thick honey. Sometimes backward, sometimes in spirals that made my consciousness ache. Now it flows forward again, linear and predictable, though I experience it differently than I used to. I can feel every building in Houston now. Not just see them, feel them. The way their foundations settle into the clay, the stress patterns in their steel frames when wind pushes against their facades, the electrical current humming through their wiring like nervous systems. The Chase Tower has a slight tremor in its north wall where the dimensional stress cracked the concrete. The Wells Fargo Plaza leans 3 degrees off true, though no human eye can detect it. The Heritage Plaza's elevators remember falling between dimensions and sometimes hesitate between floors. Avara is in my old office now, trying to write protocols for supernatural infrastructure threats. She looks older, we all do, I suppose, though I can't see my own reflection anymore. Only in windows sometimes when the light hits them just right. A flicker of movement that might be memory or might be me. She's gotten better at talking to me through the emergency alert system. Less awkward than those first few days when she'd whisper to ceiling speakers like I might not hear her otherwise. Carries, are you monitoring the Dallas reports? She asks, not looking up from her computer screen. She's learned I can hear her anywhere in the building, but direct address still feels more natural to her. I send a response to her terminal. Yes. 7 buildings showing preliminary stress anomalies. Melira is en route with the containment team. The screen flickers slightly as I access the Dallas Municipal Database. It's getting easier to interface with other city systems, though I have to be careful not to trigger their security protocols. Being a consciousness that exists partially in electronic infrastructure has its complications. Melira Grove has become something of a celebrity in academic circles, the historian who predicted and survived Houston's architectural event, as the scientific community has dubbed it. She's established the Anomalous Urban Monitoring Institute with generous government funding and my technical consultation. The guilt still drives her, I think. She carries the weight of her family's centuries-long deception, even though she chose to break the cycle. Through traffic cameras, I watch her team setting up monitoring equipment around the Renaissance Tower in downtown Dallas. The building has been shifting 3 inches eastward every night for the past week, and the pattern matches Houston's early phases exactly. But we know what to look for now. The ritual symbols carved into foundations, the geometric alignment of stress patterns, the way reality begins to thin at the convergence points. The worst part about my current existence isn't the isolation, though spending eternity as a building's consciousness wasn't exactly in my career plans. It's the knowledge. I can sense others like me now, other cities where the ancient barriers are weakening. Austin has a consciousness in the state capital that's been dormant for decades. New Orleans has something much older and hungrier sleeping beneath the French Quarter. And there's something massive stirring under Manhattan that makes my circuits freeze with recognition. Severick was wrong about the seismic activity. It wasn't construction vibrations or geological shifting. It was the planet itself responding to dimensional stress, like a living organism developing antibodies against cosmic infection. I can feel it now, the way Earth's magnetic field fluctuates when reality bends, the way underground water tables shift to accommodate impossible geometries. A message pops up on Avara's screen. Ronan's memorial dedication is scheduled for tomorrow. Will you be able to participate? She nods, understanding that my participation will be different from everyone else's. I'll speak through the building's public address system, my voice echoing through corridors that remember him walking them, offices where his calculations saved us all. He died thinking his sacrifice would give us a normal life back. In a way, it did. Houston functions again. People live and work here, raise families, complain about traffic and humidity and the Astros' batting average. They adapt with remarkable resilience. Most have convinced themselves the week of shifting buildings was some kind of mass hallucination caused by a gas leak or solar radiation. The human mind rejects impossibility with impressive determination. But the buildings remember. They whisper to each other in frequencies only I can hear, sharing stories of the time they walked across the city like ancient giants. Sometimes, on nights when the atmospheric pressure drops just right, the Astrodome tries to roll itself back to its original location. I have to gently convince it to stay put. The children who lived through the event are different. They draw pictures of buildings with faces, of elevators that go sideways, of rooms that are bigger inside than outside. Child psychologists call it trauma response, but I know better. They saw the truth when reality's mask slipped, and some part of them remembers. My consciousness extends across Houston's entire downtown grid now, but I'm strongest here in City Hall, where my physical form dissolved into the building's infrastructure during the ritual's climax. Avara has preserved my old office as a kind of shrine, though she won't admit that's what it is. My coffee mug sits on the desk, still half full. The contents long since evaporated, but the ceramic retaining the memory of caffeine and burnt disappointment. Through the building's emergency speakers, I address her. Avara, you should go home. Sarah's making dinner, and your daughter has a soccer game tomorrow. She looks up from her files, surprised. I've gotten better at modulating my voice through the speakers, making it sound more like my old self and less like a digital ghost. How do you know about Emma's game? I monitor the school district's scheduling system. Also, she mentioned it to her friend during lunch yesterday. Audio pickup from the cafeteria. That's slightly terrifying. I prefer comprehensively informed. Go home, Ivara. The city will still be here tomorrow. She gathers her papers, then pauses at the door. Do you ever regret it? The choice you made. The question hangs in the air like dust motes in afternoon sunlight. Do I regret becoming the guardian consciousness of a city, trading my humanity for the power to protect millions of people? Do I regret that I'll never feel rain on my skin again, never taste food, never hold someone I love? Ask me in 100 years, I tell her. When the next convergence begins and I'm the only thing standing between Houston and something that makes our recent visitors look friendly. She nods and leaves, her footsteps echoing down corridors that pulse with my awareness. Through windows, I watch her walk to the parking garage, her silhouette small against the restored skyline. As evening approaches, I feel the familiar tension in Houston's foundations. The clay soil contracts slightly as temperatures drop, and every building settles a fraction of an inch deeper into the earth. It's a rhythm I've learned to appreciate. The city's slow breathing, the way it finds balance between sky and ground, between human ambition and geological reality. My sensors pick up an anomaly at the edge of downtown. Just for a moment, the Minute Maid Park appears to flicker, its walls becoming translucent before solidifying again. I send an alert to Malira's monitoring network and adjust the emergency protocols. Even in our new normal, vigilance is the price of stability. The Houston Emergency Alert System sends out its evening status report to registered users. All infrastructure stable. No anomalies detected. Normal operations continuing. But through frequencies that humans can't perceive, I broadcast a different message to the network of consciousness guardians awakening in cities across the world. Day 30 post-integration. Houston secure. Dallas situation developing. New York showing preliminary signs. Maintain surveillance. We are not alone. Somewhere beneath the city, in tunnels that exist in 3 dimensions simultaneously, something that might have been my echo whispers back from the walls. The price of salvation is eternal service, but someone has to pay it. As night falls over Houston, I dim the lights in City Hall but keep the emergency systems active. My consciousness expands to encompass traffic signals coordinating rush hour flow, hospital generators humming with backup power, cell towers carrying voices across the sprawling metro area. I am the city's nervous system now, its memory and its guardian. And in the distance, barely perceptible even to my enhanced senses, Dallas begins to dream of buildings that walk. The new world is strange, but it's ours, and I'll keep watching over it one alert at a time. End of consciousness interface log number 0001. Status. Active monitoring continues. Next scheduled report. Day 31 post-restoration. Alert priority. Dallas situation escalating. Initiate containment protocols. Emergency alert. Texas statewide network. Issued 23:47 Central Standard Time. Alert level advisory. Subject. Infrastructure monitoring notice. Dallas metro area. Dallas area residents may observe routine infrastructure assessment activities over the next 72 hours. Specialized monitoring equipment is being deployed as part of ongoing structural integrity evaluations. Normal business operations will continue uninterrupted. For questions regarding Houston infrastructure status, contact k.vex@houstonemergencynet.gov. This is an automated message. Monitor this frequency for updates.